Hello friends! You know what you want to include in your vertical slice. Now we'll go over some practical skills you can use to help you get it done. The goal is to take your prototype from a very rough proof of concept, 30 seconds of fun prototype, to a fully polished 30-minute play session that will impress publishers to fund the development of the rest of your game. Agile methodologies are commonly used in game development to streamline the process of development. The most popular Agile methodologies that you may have heard of are Scrum, Kanban, Extreme Programming, and the Adaptive Project Framework. While Scrum is the most popular, most game development studios tend to develop their own systems or some form of hybrid approach. Many of these end up being poorly implemented by management, with excessive amounts of time wasted on meetings or ceremonies. But there's a lot of techniques we can learn from these methodologies to help us as solo developers. Building an entire game ourselves can be a bit like trying to eat an elephant. It seems like an impossible task, but if you take it one bite at a time, eventually it will get done. Much like how we created a step-by-step list of tasks for building our prototype, we need to break down the vertical slice into individual bite-sized pieces that can each be easily accomplished in isolation. This can be used for every aspect of the game, not just writing code, like the creation of art, music, and sound assets, level design, writing, etc. Try to break down every task into its simplest form, ideally so that it may be completed in a single work session. Many of these Agile methodologies will either have each individual task written on a post-it note on a wall or board, or in a similar digital form on a website. These tasks can then be organized into different categories of things that are required, nice to have, or cut from production to help keep the project focused on its objective. While completing each individual task, the note or card is either physically taken by the developer completing the task, or moved to a separate section of the board to indicate that it is currently being worked on. The intention is to have only a single task being worked on at once by any individual person, and that task should be completed in its entirety before moving on, at which point it will be moved to another section for review or testing. Once a task has been completed, reviewed, and/or tested to make sure it is sufficient, only then is it moved to the completed section. For example, you might think that making a character move is a single task, but this can be broken down further, and doing so will lead to better overall design of your code. First, let's make a task for input handling. So we need to write a script which accepts all the input the player will be giving to the game, and be able to process it in isolation from what the input does. This script can then be tested in isolation to make sure every input works as expected before moving on to the next task. Writing your character script to move the character can then be a separate task and also a separate script from the input handling. If your input handling and character movement scripts can be written and tested in isolation, that means your character doesn't need to be controlled by the player, say, during a cutscene, or that the player can be given the ability to control any character. Additional tasks may include drawing or modeling the character, animating them walking, recording footstep sounds, adding dust particle emitters, etc. As a solo developer or working in a small team, this might seem like a lot of extra work, but the efficiency gained from breaking everything down into individual tasks far outweighs the overhead. Developers will complete as many of these tasks as they can over the course of a development cycle, or sprint, which is usually 2 weeks, but can be whatever length of time works best for you. When working as part of a team, each sprint might start with dividing up tasks amongst the group so everyone knows what everyone else is working on. If for any reason a completed task doesn't meet review or testing requirements, it may be returned to the developer for some small bug fixes or adjustments before being moved to completed. If there's not enough time in the current sprint to complete a task, however, it may be returned to the to-do list to be completed during the next sprint, or further divided into smaller tasks. Identifying dependencies between tasks can also be helpful for making sure that some features are implemented in one sprint, and features that depend on them are implemented in a later sprint. The end of a sprint might also include reviewing the work which was completed, and what was not completed, leading to adjustments in how tasks are broken down, or how they are distributed amongst the team. Even if you're working alone, it's a good idea to compare how long you think each task would take to complete with how long it actually took. Through repetition of this cycle, you'll get a feel for how much work can be completed comfortably in each sprint. Keeping a record of this can also help you with planning and budgeting the remainder of the project. Many of these Agile methodologies will also assign points to each task, representing their difficulty or amount of effort required to complete them. This helps keep track of how much actual work is being done in each sprint based on the amount of total effort rather than the number of completed tasks, since not all tasks are created equal. The amount of points assigned to each task are numbered from the Fibonacci sequence, as a reflection of how difficult it is to estimate the amount of effort required to complete a large task. Ideally, every task should be assigned a small number, and if it can't, it should be broken down into multiple smaller tasks that can. While not really the intention of this system, I personally prefer to allocate points to my tasks as hours of work. This also includes the time I spend thinking about the problem and how to solve it, not just its implementation. You can do all of this yourself with just some post-it notes and a blank wall, board, or any flat surface really. But if you're working with a team or you just prefer to not use paper, there are many digital tools we can use to implement this agile style of development into our projects, and most are free to use for solo developers or small teams. Jira and Trello both include task boards you can use in place of a physical board to organize your tasks, while Jira also includes other tools like timelines, reports, and can integrate with other tools. Personally, I prefer the simplicity of Trello since I don't really need any of the extra features of Jira. Miro is essentially just a digital whiteboard where you can write or draw anything you want, create your own task board, flowcharts, timeline, or anything you need. Even if you're already using Trello for managing tasks, I still recommend checking out Miro for organizing your thoughts on game design in general. Figma is a popular alternative to Miro, but they use AI. While they claim their AI is never trained on user data, there have been lawsuits against them, so I don't recommend using their service. Notion is an alternative to Jira, but they also use AI. However, they guarantee that your user files are protected, and no AI will be allowed access to your project without you specifically opting into it. Godot itself can help us manage our Agile tasks by including a few comment keywords, which will be colored automatically in yellow. Task, TBD, or to do can be used to mark the location for code you know you need to write later, but is unrelated to your current task. Hack can be used for code that is just a temporary shortcut to make your current task work the way it is intended, but should be updated in a future task. Fix Me can be used for code that you know doesn't work properly and needs to be fixed, or Bug for code that you suspect may be causing errors but you're not entirely sure. Warning is also an option for marking code that pushes a warning message and needs to be fixed later. Test or testing will be colored in green and can be used for marking code that needs to be tested, while info, note, or notice can all be used for simply including additional information about your code. Alert, attention, caution, critical, danger, and security are all also available if you need them and will be colored in red to draw extra attention. You can easily search your entire project for any of these comments with the Find in Files window, which can be opened with Ctrl or Command Shift F. This provides single-click navigation to the exact point in any script where you need to fix a bug or complete a task. Now that we know how to build our vertical slice, it's time to get started. In the next video, we'll review our vertical slice and plan the remainder of the production. I'll see you in the next video.